Good evening and welcome to the third meeting of the Committee of Adjustment for 2024. May I ask to ensure that your cell phones are turned off, and if you find it necessary to answer your cell phone, please hold your speech until you're outside in the hallway. Now, members of the public with a particular interest in any application, please be sure to fill out the form at the doorway, including your name and your address. I see many people are doing that. If anyone's overlooked it, please ensure that you do fill it out. I'm now required to read the following notice. The notice of decisions for applications we review this evening will only be forwarded to those who have either presented a written request for the decision or to those who have recorded their names and addresses on the form provided at the back of the room. Furthermore, a formal request is necessary to be advised of an Ontario Land Tribunal hearing on any application, and in order to be allowed to make a presentation at such Ontario Land Tribunal hearing that might occur. So if you're following remotely and would like to be notified of a decision or any appeals that may result from a decision, please be sure to send an email to our Secretary-Treasurer, Lindsay Stamen, and her email address is lsthamaNN@cityofkingston, all one word, .ca. Be sure to include your full name and address and the file number of the application. Now, I'd like to share with you the 5-part format we'll be using to navigate our way through the applications this evening. In the first part, the staff will introduce the application, and if you are the applicant or the applicant's agent, I invite you to come up to the speaker's area to my right, state your name and address for the record, and then any additional information you feel is necessary concerning the application. In step 2, I'll invite the committee members to ask questions of either city staff or the applicant or their agent. In step 3, I'll open the public portion of the meeting. Members of the public can attend the speaker station, again on my right, or raise your virtual hand in Zoom. When I recognize you, I'll ask that, again, you state your full name and address for the record, and then you'll have an opportunity to make your comments or ask questions. Each speaker will be allowed 5 minutes, and I'll do my best to give you a warning at 4 or 4.5 minutes. It would be very helpful to the committee if the speakers do not repeat the same issues. So if someone has already covered a point that you may wish to raise and you've heard it already, then please don't feel compelled to repeat it. It's not helpful to committee to hear the same comment repeatedly. Now, during the public portion of the meeting, please don't expect an immediate response, because at this point we'll be recording your questions and comments, and it's only after the public portion of the meeting is closed that we'll turn to the applicant, their agent, or staff to respond to the public comments received. I'll call 3 times for public comments before the public portion of the meeting is closed. In the 4th step of the meeting, I'll give the applicant, their agent, or staff an opportunity to address the public comments. And in the 5th and final step, I'll turn the meeting over to the committee, where the committee will deliberate on the application and make a decision. I'll be using that same format for each and every application. So, Ian, do we have a quorum?
Good evening, everyone, and through you, I can currently confirm we do indeed have quorum. Currently absent from the committee is Peter Skibo and Somnath Sinha.
Thank you. So I'll call the meeting to order at 5:34, and I refer the committee to the agenda Can I have a motion from the committee to approve the agenda as amended? Now, on that point, there was a number of items and documentation that were sent out today. In total, there were 12 pieces of correspondence concerning 51 Alwington Avenue and 3 pieces of correspondence concerning 283 Rideau Street. So, is there a resolution from the committee to adopt the agenda as amended? Doug, you have a question or a comment?
Mr. Chair, I was just wondering if we could reorder item number 8 to bring Alwington to be A instead of F. I think most of the people are here for Alwington, so I think it would make sense to do that one first instead of them sitting through all the others.
I certainly agree. Would the committee members wish to speak to that?
I have no issue with that.
So we'll have a motion on the table to adopt the agenda as amended. Moved by Doug, seconded by Jeff. All in favor? Carried. Turning to confirmation of the minutes, the committee members had a chance to review the minutes of the February 26th meeting. Can I have a mover? Or is there any question or comments on the minutes first? Moved by Jordan, seconded by Doug. And all in favor? Carried. Any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. We have no delegations tonight, no requests for deferral, and no returning deferral items, so we'll move directly to business, and that will be item 8, forgot the number, 8F, which is 51 Alwington Avenue. Lindsay, could you introduce the application, please?
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Vice Chair. This is an application for minor variance, file number D13-005-2024 at 51 Alwington Avenue to permit the conversion of a detached garage to a detached additional residential unit. The addendum contains 10 items of correspondence for this application, 9 letters with concerns, and 1 response letter from the applicant, and 2 additional pieces of correspondence were received after finalization of the addendum and were forwarded by email.
Thank you, Lindsay. And agent for the applicant, sir? Oh, is the agent present? Sorry. If you could give us your name and address and any additional comments you might have.
It's the opposite of what I expected. Good evening, everyone. My name is Miles Weeks. I'm a senior planner with Foten Consultants, representing the owner on this application. My address is 4 Cataraqui Street, Kingston, Ontario. We have reviewed staff's report. We agree with their recommendations and their conclusions. One item I would like to add for consideration from the committee is for the addition of 1 more variance. So this would be a 7th variance. This is in response to comments received today from a neighbor, a concerned neighbor, wishing to protect the existing fence along the northerly property line. As I understand it, this is a chain link fence that's, over the years had vines grow across it. We agree with the comments. We would be happy to protect it, whereas currently the city's zoning bylaw would require us to replace it with a 1.8 meter high wooden privacy fence, which is typical for many developments. But in this case, we feel it would be appropriate to add a variance to allow the existing fence to remain. And I'm happy to address any questions and comments from the public and from members of the committee tonight.
Are there any questions from the committee members to the applicant, agent, or staff?
I'll start. Just for greater certainty, you're asking for variances with respect to parking, drive aisle width, walkway overlap, interior setback, lot coverage, and this privacy fence requirement. Do I have that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
I've got nothing else. Thank you.
Any other questions? Doug? Sorry, Jeff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So in looking at the minimum interior side yard setback, we're looking at a 0 side back in this situation?
Yes, that's correct. The proposal is to convert an existing garage that's been on the property for decades. We wouldn't be changing the location of the existing garage. The garage is essentially built on the property line, so the variance is technical in nature, really just to acknowledge that that garage is where it is. We're not changing anything. There'd be no changes to the configuration of the lot or the location of that garage.
Okay, so there's not going to be anything new on this property on that side. There's going to be a building there whether this is approved or not. There's still going to be a garage there.
That's correct, yes. There's an existing home, which will be remaining as is. A small mudroom at the rear will be demolished off the back of the principal dwelling just to accommodate parking. And the existing garage will stay exactly where it is. No new buildings are proposed. We're not proposing to enlarge any buildings. Everything will stay the same whether the variance is approved or not.
Okay, a couple of technical questions. Are there to be any windows put into this side of this building, into the interior side yard?
It's a great question. So the southern facade of the garage, which is the one that shares that property line that it sits on top of, that facade has been designed to have no windows. There'll be no windows into the neighboring yard, and that's shown on the elevations submitted with the application. Furthermore, staff have included a condition in the minor variance approval, should committee vote to approve it tonight, which would require that no windows be installed so that at the building permit stage, that logic is carried forward and isn't lost at later stages in the design process.
Okay, so some of my concerns here are drainage off of the roof and overhangs of eaves. Are there going to be anything new as far as that goes?
Not to my knowledge. That is something that would be dealt with at the building permit stage. As far as I understand, there will be no impact to drainage. We're not adding significant new paving. Again, we're not changing the garage on the property. It would be interior renovations. So that would be a detail that's dealt with at the building permit stage. So I really don't have a technical response for you at this time, but perhaps staff can elaborate on just how that process would be reviewed.
Thank you. Through the chair, happy to just add to Mr. Weeks' response on that. Should there be any changes proposed to the existing building that would have the effect of modifying the way in which water currently drains from that existing structure, that's something that the applicant would have to demonstrate such that there are no adverse impacts onto neighboring properties. So as a standard condition of any minor variance application, that is something that's required and would be reviewed at the building permit stage.
Okay, thank you. So further on to this, my concern is if there is a 0 lot line, maintenance on this side of the building, how is that going to be done if it's not on the owner's property?
That is a good question. I would imagine that neighbors would have to work together. In general, the garage has existed for decades, to my understanding, with no major issues. The renovation process would further strengthen the building, so I don't foresee any need for significant maintenance, but certainly, access to the side of that building would be necessary at some point for maintenance, regardless, again, of whether or not the variances are approved. So the issue of maintenance is a fair question, and one that I think the owner would be happy to work with their neighbors on to resolve in the long term.
Okay, now this is a change of use, not a change of the building structure itself, and as such there's a permission required here. Now, is there an agreement with the neighbor for maintenance of this building at this time? Does the neighbor agree to allowing access to maintain this building on this side of the property now, in the future?
No, there's no agreement in place to my knowledge.
Okay, that's concerning for me. Have the neighbors been approached, and are they in agreement with this application?
I'm not aware of whether the owner has had discussions with the neighbors. I am aware that they have commented on the application, but Beyond that, I'm not aware of any correspondence.
Mr. Chair, I should note that Mr. Sina is now here as well.
Through the chair, if I may just add to that, the city does have a bylaw to allow for a right of entry for maintenance purposes to deal with situations like this that are existing, where there is not sufficient space on a subject property to allow for maintenance to occur.
Thank you.
Somnath, did you have a question?
Negative, I'm late to this, so I'm staying out of this particular file.
Jeff, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. So we're looking at a rear lot line with no privacy fence requirement. Is there a reason why there is no required fencing here?
So on that particular variance, the intention is largely technical. Aside from the additional variance I requested at the start for the northern property line, that was in response to a neighbor's concern about losing their existing fencing. The variance to essentially allow no privacy fencing on the south property line, it's not the rear property line, it would be the south property line. Okay. That's a result of the fact that the garage sits on the property line and it would be impossible to put a fence there. So it's technical in nature. The intention is to maintain fencing around the property where possible.
Okay, thank you for that. It is the southern interior property line, not the rear I was looking at.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions from the committee members? I do have several questions, and Mr. Weeks, I have a question on the point you just made. The variance, as I read it, with respect to the south lot line, south interior lot line, is to eliminate the need for any privacy fencing along the entire length of that lot line. That's how I see it worded. But let me finish. But what I understand is the building shares or abuts that lot line only for the length of the building, and that otherwise there's a lengthy section of south lot line that's open. One only needs to look at the photographs in the staff report to see that there is portions of a privacy fence along that south interior lot line beyond the limits of the garage. Is it intended, despite the variance, to provide screen fencing along the open portion of that southerly lot line, or to provide no screen fencing along that southerly lot line?
The intention is to provide fencing where possible, so where the garage does not sit. And I would note that that is generally, it's a fair question, and I understand where you're coming from. There is a condition included by staff on most applications that the plans that are submitted with the application, that those generally be reflected in future building plans. That allows for, misinterpretation, that sort of thing to be accounted for. So in this case, while the variance may say no privacy fencing is required, the plans do show it, and that is the intention.
Thank you. And then I had a question for staff. I had a little bit of difficulty understanding the arithmetic in the variance related to parking. In particular, variance number 2, which speaks to and this is the requirement, a perpendicular driveway or drive aisle 2.6 by 5.5 with a minimum driveway width of 6.7 meters. That describes the standard requirements of the bylaw. The length and width of a parking stall and the width of the abutting drive aisle. Then the variance goes on to say proposed 3 meters by 6 meters, which I understand to be the size of the parking stall. In other words, there's an increment, an increase dimensionally over the standard of the bylaw with a 3-meter driveway width. That's the existing driveway. So the variance requested is a 0.6 meter parking space. I confess I did not understand where that 0.6 meters comes in. Can you just walk me through how that numerical value comes into the variance as relates to the parking space?
Through the chair, yeah, happy to provide some clarification on that. I can appreciate the confusion in regards to the variance requested line and the 2.6 meters that's indicated for the parking space width. In this particular instance, the applicant is providing for a dimension of the actual parking space itself that is larger than required by the bylaw to help alleviate for the lack of drive aisle width. They've also demonstrated on their plans that have been submitted the ability for a vehicle to back out and then exit the driveway facing the street. For safety reasons, that was something that staff worked closely with the applicant to ensure could be achieved in this case, as we appreciated that in instances where a future user would have to back out of that parking space, it would decrease the functionality of that parking space and may make it less likely to be used properly.
Thank you. Mr. Weeks, can you tell me whether you've had any communication with the neighbor with regard to your 7th proposed variance to eliminate the north interior side lot line screen fence? You've put this on the table tonight, but there's been any dialogue with the neighbor to the north?
So it was the neighbor to the north that wrote in today. So we haven't had the opportunity to discuss with them directly, but it was the neighbor to the north that suggested this. So we would be happy to not include that variance if the committee's concerned, but we felt it was an opportunity to acknowledge the comments from the neighbor, and it can be easily accommodated in the plans. So no, we've not discussed it with them directly, but it is in direct response to comments received from that neighbor, if that addresses your question.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions or comments from the committee? Jeff?
Thank you. So a question for staff here, or just a clarification. The applicant in this situation has a right by the city's planning documents to put a secondary residential use on this property?
Through the chair, thank you for the question. Yes, so all urban residential properties in the city of Kingston, subject to some that have servicing constraints under the zoning bylaw, have the ability to have up to 3 dwelling units and 8 aggregate bedrooms on an urban residential lot. So yes, the proposal to have a second unit with 3 additional bedrooms for a total of 8 bedrooms on the property is a right that this property already has under the zoning bylaw, as do other properties on Alwington Avenue.
Okay, thank you. They go off automatically now. Okay, thank you. One more question here. Is there a requirement for private privacy space for the unit?
What do you mean in regards to privacy space?
Sorry, this is a residential property. Does the secondary unit have a private area where it is exclusively for their private use exterior?
As in like amenity space?
Yes, thank you.
So amenity space requirements of the zoning bylaw apply to proposals for 4 or more dwelling units. They do not apply in cases where an additional residential unit is proposed, such as this. In this particular case, there is quite a large rear yard on the subject property, which I understand to be the intent of the owner to maintain for the use of all site occupants, but I'll defer to the applicant if they have anything further to add on that.
Okay, thank you. So in fact, here we have an entitlement to put a unit in here. It's a matter of making it fit within the existing zoning and the existing building as it sits on the property.
That's exactly right. The performance standards that, the variances from the performance standards that the applicant is looking for tonight are very much to allow the use to be accommodated within the existing building on the property, so as to limit the extent of any built form changes on the property and limit the extent of impact to neighboring properties.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the committee? Okay, seeing none, I think it's appropriate to open the public meeting. My first question would be, how many people in attendance wish to speak to the committee on this application? 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay.
And then I'll also just quickly add to members of the public joining us by Zoom, if you could raise your virtual hand, we just want to make sure how many are speaking. So if more than 5 are speaking, we can break them down into clumps of 5 so questions can be answered and you're not sitting here for 45 minutes waiting for your question to be answered. So if members on Zoom could also raise their hand if you wish to speak to this item. And we'll give a couple of different calls for that. In addition, there is another public speaking spot over there on the left of us at the front table here. Just in case for members on this side of the room, it's probably a lot easier for you guys to make it to that one than to get all the way over there. Yeah, so with both sides, it's when you press the red button, it'll turn red and you'll start to hear yourself. So it's a little bit counterintuitive because red kind of seems wrong, but just we're good for that way.
So I invite whoever wishes to speak first to come up to the table. Please ensure you provide your name and address for the record, and you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Hugh Langley, and I live at 46 Allington Avenue. Within the documents submitted today was a page and a quarter letter from myself signed by almost 30 neighbors from the street. The letter would have been sent earlier, but with March break, I wanted to wait to have people get back to town to understand what is going on here. My letter is self-explanatory. I'm not going to read it. I'm just going to highlight some points. With all respect to the city and the Fountain Group, the statement, "This proposal meets the intent of the official plan as proposed. Detached ARU unit will not result in any negative impacts to adjacent properties to the neighborhood." And myself and the remainder of my neighbors here today, as well as letters of over 12, 13 people, really do not see any proof by the developer or his consultant group that this is the truth. 51 Allington Avenue has been a student house for about 4 or 5 years. On average, there's been 5 students in the house. The driveway has been used for parking, 4 cars end to end. The students, by and large, have been very kind and approachable and have worked with us with the difficulty of these cars coming and going, often blocking our own driveways, but it is really something. I don't know if the city or the Fountain Group has asked any of us as to how it has been working so far, and certainly haven't asked us at all how we think it might work in the future. What's being proposed is 8 bedrooms. I realize that it's all within the plan and allowed, but it's 8 bedrooms with a maximum occupancy of 16 people. Students have tight budgets and often double up on rooms. With a minimum of 8 people, the number of cars is likely to be 4 or 5, even higher. This proposal with variances 1 and 3 allow for this property, which is a narrow property, to have 1 parking spot. 1 spot for a minimum of 8 people. This will not work. There's a 75 by 10-foot driveway in existence that's going to become a laneway walkway that needs access to the back house for safety vehicles, for fire, for police, whatever. That laneway is likely to be occupied by student cars constantly. Is it going to be up to us as neighbors of 51 to be calling the city to say there's a bylaw infringement in this driveway and that it is unsafe for the back house? This is too big an onus to put on us, and it's going to lead to difficulties. The Fulton Group themselves, in an answer to a letter written by one of my neighbors, says, "No off-street parking is anticipated to be required for future residents." Our question is, where will these students park? Half of them have cars now, and with 1 spot, it won't be possible. Allington Avenue is not a street at present that you can get a parking pass or a parking permit for. Our concern is, where will these cars go? And they will likely end up in the existing driveway. What we've also seen with Uber drivers, Uber Eats, Amazon, etc., the traffic is really unsustainable. So with no plan for these students or their cars in this existing project, using variances 1 and 3, I'm not an expert, I don't know anything about variances or legal matters for that matter, but I really don't see how it can be stated that this is not going to affect our neighborhood. It's a quiet neighborhood, 30-something houses, everybody parks on their own house. This is just a bad design and a bad proposal. There are other houses on the street that the developer could look at that are large enough and wide enough to adequately provide parking for his tenants. This will not be the case. And this is why we strongly object to this proposal. Cars will be illegally parked across our laneways, driveways. There simply isn't room on the street,
30
and it's not
seconds.
allowed. I'll stop with that and allow my other neighbors to make presentations or perhaps questions. But I wish that the owner was here tonight so he could see the amount of opposition to this project from long-standing owners of homes on this street that have tried desperately to keep it a nice family neighborhood. We have no objection to students, but when it becomes dangerous with this amount of cars, it becomes a concern. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Oh, thank you, sir. Name and address for 5 minutes.
Thank you. John Curtis, 44 Allington Avenue. I just wanted to make it clear that there are 15 residents of Allington Avenue here tonight to support each other in making submissions tonight. I just think it would be nice to have that on the record. One of the things that wasn't mentioned by Hugh was with respect to the traffic and cars and so on. I don't think you mentioned it. And that is sort of the nature of our neighborhood. There are a lot of young children. They play on the street. Maybe they're not supposed to play on the street. I don't know. But anyway, they're on the street. They're playing in the yards. There's balls flying around and so on. And with extra cars on the street, it's hard to see children on the side of the road. They might jump into the road. It's actually can become a fairly busy street, especially when there's problems with traffic on Sir John A. Macdonald and things like that. Occasionally, it does get used as a alternate route for people getting in and out of the city. So I am concerned about children. My own children have grown up, but we're surrounded by children on either side, and I am worried about that. So the additional cars, not only the cars themselves moving on the street, but also just creating interference for people who are driving on the street would be unable to see children sort of jumping out on the street by accident. So that is a concern. The other thing I just wanted to point out, I don't know if it was clear from what Hugh said, but he was referring to a report number COA 24-024. And on page 132, it says that the proposal meets the intent of the official plan as proposed. Detached an ARU, additional rental unit, will not result in any negative impacts to adjacent properties or to the neighborhood. And I'm interested, where does that come from? None of us were consulted before tonight. Where does that come from? Is that a question I can address to someone right now? Or does that get answered later, or gets answered later? Okay.
No, our practice here is to accumulate the comments and then
Okay,
ask
that's what I
staff
thought.
or the agent to respond in a collective way.
Yeah, okay. All right, thank you. Another question to ask. There was discussion about the oversized parking space that is part of the variation. And it was described by the city staff person that it was such that the person parking there could back out and drive back out of the parking space and drive out of the laneway, the currently what is the driveway, drive out forward, and that this was a safety consideration. And I think that's great. I mean, these are the kinds of things that we're worried about. People backing onto a street is always more dangerous, and especially that particular spot because it's very enclosed right up to the street, edge of the street. My question is this, does that ability to back up account for the fact that there will be snow a part of the year, and that area will be quite a bit smaller because it's quite boxed in. I don't know where you'd put the snow, to be honest. So I'm just wondering, was that considered? And one other question. I think I understood that this building has no windows. Is that correct? Seems strange. I'm not sure that we want students living in a place with no windows. Anyway, thank you.
Any further speakers?
My name is Marguerite Van Die. I live at 60 Alwington Avenue. And I don't have questions, but I have a few general comments. In report COA 24024, which has just been referred to, the project's planner presents the goal of the variances as, quote, support housing affordability by promoting increased supply and affordability of housing, end of quote. With all due respect, this is a disingenuous way to address Kingston's current housing crisis. The proposed ARU will not ease the housing crisis for those who are homeless, precariously housed, or immigrants waiting in downtown hotels. Instead, the proposed variances are aimed at turning 51 Alwington Avenue into a larger student rental property. There is no crisis in student housing in Kingston, thanks to a well-honed pattern of investors turning one family home after another into profitable student rentals, many with absentee landlords and little or no enforcement of standards. As residents, we have no objection to students or other tenants on the street, as long as these respect the character of the community and the existing structures. As the Provincial Planning Act defines a minor variance, the total impact of the requested 7 variances is not minor. The changes will irreversibly and permanently turn 51 Alwington Avenue into a student rental without proper parking. That parking issue is extremely important and it really needs to be addressed. With an absentee landlord, unrealistic promises by the planner, and insufficient city funding to enforce bylaws, the residents of Alwington Avenue will experience a sharp decline in well-being and safety. We have a strong sense of community, and we have made every effort to maintain the integrity of the neighborhood, and we willingly pay exceptionally high property taxes. Civic pride requires that the City of Kingston value and maintain its older, family-oriented neighborhoods. We must stop whittling them away by poorly planned developments without foresight to the street's future and the families who live there, some of who have lived there for generations. The requested variances are not in the public interest, and they're incompatible with the established form and character of the neighborhood. They are desirable only to the applicant, and I respectfully ask the committee that they be refused. Thank you.
Do we have any? Oh, yeah, please.
Hi, I'm Amy Fisher, and I live at 47 Alwington Avenue, and I'm one of 2 abutting houses next to the proposal at 51. And I think, sorry, what is your name here in the brown vest? As you spoke to earlier, yeah, what's your name? Jeff? Yeah, as Jeff mentioned earlier, he brought up something that was a real concern of mine, and something that's very important to me is communication. And we first received a letter from the applicant stating that we had an opportunity to voice our concerns. And at that point, I reached out to the property managers next door, who I had introduced myself to before, who my husband had. They had suggested perhaps our sons could do some snow removal. And I just said to them, I have some concerns, and I'm wondering if we can talk to the owner about this. I just would love to have some of my concerns allayed, and they said to me, there's nothing to be concerned about. Please just come to the meeting on this Monday night. And I said, well, I think it's really important that we talk with the owner. And I said, that's sort of how I like to deal with things, deal with people face to face and just to have a conversation. And they said, you'll have to deal with us. And I said, well, I find that quite rude. It's not how we do things on our street. And I really hope if they're planning on doing something that they would want to let the neighbors know. And so I'm saying this because this is one of my main concerns, is who's benefiting from this. And I'd love the city to answer who they believe is benefiting from this. And I'd also like the city to answer what they believe the impacts are going to be on the residents. And as many people have mentioned before, we really welcome the students. My husband and I go over, we introduce ourselves, we let them know that we'll probably be noisier than them themselves with our 3 teenagers. But I'm really not seeing a lot of emphasis on the negative impact that our neighbors have mentioned and have written in about. And I feel like this is just about who's going to benefit from this. Thanks.
Any further, oh, please.
Thank you. I'm Councillor Clanny Glenn for the District of Sydenham, and I'm here in support of my constituents. So I'd like to start off first by saying it's well understood, I think, that by right the owner can convert this property. However, the number of variances is quite concerning to, I think, everyone, and I'm not going to reiterate the multitude that we've already heard, but also this last-minute dropping of potential other variants I find very disconcerting. It doesn't give anyone adequate time to duly consider whether this is worth doing or not. So we're being asked, the committee rather, is being asked to do this at the last minute, and I don't think that that's fair. Having sat on a number of committees and at council, I know how difficult it is to weigh in easily when you have such a limited amount of time. So a couple of quick things that I do want to ask, though. Could we please confirm the current width of the driveway? So I find it relevant to understand that, because unless my constituents have been out measuring it, I don't think we understand what that change is really going to look like. So if we could have that confirmed. I share the concern that the parking is going to be problematic. Let's just be honest. Students live a little bit differently. This is not like putting a family in there where there might be one extra car because there's going to be a couple of children. We're talking about 8 young adults, minimum, living on this property. And to think that there aren't going to be more than one car at this property, I think is unrealistic, which is going to lead us to a situation where we're going to see parking along that driveway, even if the signs are up. And that's going to mean bylaws going to be out more frequently. And I'm not in favor of that, of course. All right, we know that our money needs to be spent on other things besides enforcing measures that we know are almost unenforceable. So that's a concern of mine. So the snow clearance has already been brought up. I'd also like confirmation on the current parking limitations on the street, because my understanding is there's no parking between 9 and 12 and 1:30 and 4:30. And if that's the case and there's more than one vehicle, I'm not quite sure where they're going to park, especially if we're hoping that these students will walk to school. So please confirm that so that due consideration can be given for the parking and the realistic objective of being able to accommodate this number of individuals on this site. I'd also like to see you reconsider or discuss the variance with regards to the fencing on the south side. While the designs may show fencing there and the intent may be there, I've found that it's not good to leave things to intent, and that whatever we decide on this matter, it should be written down in a form that makes it clear that a fencing on either side of this building is required. So that's my comments. I think everything else has been fairly addressed. And I think the last presenter, Marguerite, thank you very much for the comments. that we do need to look at the broader context in which these developments are happening. And although that may not be a matter fully for this committee, the changes that are being proposed are going to very much change this neighborhood. Thank you.
Any further speakers?
Mr. Chair, I will recognize that there is one member in the public viewing gallery, Susan and Paul McNeil. I will quickly allow them to talk on Zoom, and you are on mute, and please state your name and address for the minutes.
Hi, my name is Susan McNeil, and my address is 31 Allington Avenue. I have lived on Allington Avenue for my entire life. My father built the house that I currently live in, and my family returned to the street because of the type of street it was, where the neighbors know each other, care for each other, and look after each other. And I think if you've never lived on a street like this, you don't know what it's like. But I can tell you I'm very concerned about the change of use of this outer structure because, quite frankly, the rest of the building, the house, is in disrepair. And I recall when the original family that lived there, which was the Cantarutti family, they had a lot of pride in maintaining that house and that property. And so I have fear that with a change in use, there's going to be another property that's just going to be for the turnover of short-term students inhabiting. I also have to let you know that I have a rental myself right beside me and at 27 Allington Avenue, and I have one lady that rents the property and takes very good care of it. But unfortunately, she lives beside another student rental where the owner is in Toronto and they do not take care of their property. And the students, it's a common driveway, and the students are constantly blocking the driveway, which we have to talk to them about. And the limited parking, the history on the limited parking on the street is because we used to have all of the street filled with students from MacArthur College. And so when anything happened at Queen's West Campus, we had tons and tons of cars on the street. We also got speed signs and laws put because we used to have corrections speeding up and down the street. Crossovers, that's not a problem anymore with the prisons closing. But I think you really do need to take to heart that this street has historically been single families. And I think it's very greedy to put more people, more students paying $1,000 and sharing a room. And I attended Queen's myself, so did my husband, and so did my one daughter. And so we know, but really, how desperate are we to put poor students in a crappy renovated garage? Can we not do better for everyone? So I think you really need to think about this part of town. What do you want it to be? You know, do we want to support people who have to work at the universities and the hospital, which I spent a whole career working as a nurse at Kingston General Hospital. And there's various professionals retired and active right now living on this street. And if we change the dynamics, which I understand you're allowed to, are we going to see more and more garages converting? Because I've got one that could be converted too, but I wouldn't do that to my neighbors. So I apologize, but I am very passionate and very emotional about this issue. So I'll leave it there.
Thank you. Have we any additional members of the public who wish to speak? And nobody else on Zoom? Okay, seeing no further speakers, we'll close the public portion of the meeting. and turn it over to the committee. Now, I've heard a number of questions and comments, and I think it's necessary for staff and for the applicant to respond. Megan, would you like to start? I'm sure you've got a good list.
I do have a good list, and I'm happy to respond. Perhaps I'll invite Mr. Weeks to go first, as I believe there were several questions directed to the applicant, and then I'm happy to follow.
Thank you very much.
So I'll do my best to respond to all those comments. I appreciate there were quite a few of them. Yes, please, staff, wherever you feel there can be something added, please do so. So I'll go a little bit out of order, just to try and, clump like comments with like comments. So just a quick point of clarification. There was one question regarding the windows based on a discussion earlier in the evening. Just to clarify, there will only be no windows on the southern facade of the building. Again, that's the one that directly sits on the property line with the neighboring property. There will be windows in the rest of the building. That would be a building code requirement. So there will be light and it will be a livable space. So just to quickly clarify on that particular item. Perhaps to just go towards parking, as that was obviously a significant concern. So there was a few different elements there. So regarding snow accumulation and movement of vehicles, as staff mentioned, the intent of having a larger parking space is so that the vehicles can turn into the parking space, do a essentially 2 or 3 point turn to get out in a forward motion and enter the property in a forward motion. We feel that will improve safety on the site for neighbors and for all the children that, as many of the members of the public commented, do play on the street. So we want to ensure safety. Now, with regards to snow accumulation affecting the ability for the vehicles to turn on the site, as we've mentioned, there is a property manager for this particular site, and they clear the snow. There's a large backyard, there's ample room for snow to be removed and moved over to the side. And if that's a particular concern, the owner is more than happy to ensure that that is a priority for the property manager moving forward. Regarding where students will park, firstly, I guess it's tricky. All these comments kind of tie into one another. So first of all, I guess maybe we'll pause on the parking and just address that student comment. So this is not necessarily a student housing development. Now, of course, there's history of students living here. We appreciate that. It's very likely that students may live there moving forward, but certainly it's not restricted to students. So I think that is an important clarification. And from a long-term perspective, for the impacts on the character of the neighborhood and the street, this particular design, it allows for the principal dwelling to remain intact without being turned into a large 8-bedroom home. Having a separate detached unit could allow for, in the future, if the property is sold, a family to live in the principal dwelling for young professionals or students or whomever to live in the secondary unit at the rear of the property. Frankly, the opportunities are quite broad. This is not specifically catered to students. This is simply new housing that can accommodate really anyone who needs it in the city. So on that note, with regards to parking, yes, I understand that historically there have been many cars parked in the driveway, and certainly the owner appreciates that. We've worked closely with the city and with the owner directly to ensure that moving forward, this will be not something that falls on the neighbors. The intent here is truly to provide one parking spot on the site. That will be written into leases with tenants, and tenants will be required to abide by that. That will be enforced by the owner and the property manager, and in that sense will ensure that the driveway and the walkway to the rear unit remains free and clear. The owner will certainly be motivated to ensure that that walkway remains free and clear for safety reasons. Certainly they don't want to be liable if there is an emergency and emergency services are not able to get to the rear of the unit. And just generally speaking, should the city be in a position where they feel they have to enforce the parking restrictions, the owner would be subject to fines. So the owner is well motivated to ensure that the property is kept, or I should say the driveway is kept free and clear going forward. With regards to on-street parking, I would likely defer a lot of that commentary to city staff. It's not really within my ability to comment on on-street parking restrictions. My one comment would simply be that with restrictions on parking for the property, if future tenants require additional parking, this simply may not be the spot for them to live. I think the city's moving forward in a direction. I think it's fair to say that the city's moving forward towards reduced parking, particularly in the downtown core, where there is easy access to commercial, to public recreational spaces, and to express transit routes. And this particular site checks all of those boxes. So I think this will attract tenants that do not require 2, 3, 4 cars of parking. So with regards to on-street parking, again, I'll defer that to the city to comment on how that's enforced and all that sort of thing. But I do feel that parking for this unit will not be a significant concern with only one parking space provided. Sorry, just looking through my notes here. Make sure I covered everything. So I guess what I'll touch on next, touched on safety. So again, with affordability, this just kind of relates to what I was mentioning about the opportunity for potentially non-students to live here. This plan, although it's not necessarily a public process, it did go through multiple rounds of review and thought with both the owner and the city. We worked with city staff to come to a conclusion that we felt was most appropriate for the site to accommodate 8 bedrooms. We found opportunities where we could potentially fit 2 parking spaces on the site because the rear of the property is so large. However, that would have required us to pave the entire thing. That would have required us to loop an S-shaped driveway to the rear, which would not be safe and would affect stormwater drainage on the property, and that would essentially remove green space in the neighborhood. And again, we felt that wasn't necessarily appropriate. So we found this one parking space design that retains the existing garage, utilizes it for additional dwelling units, and in so doing minimizes the cost of construction and helps to keep housing more affordable. Of course, this is not a silver bullet. We're not suggesting that this project will solve the affordability issue, nor will it solve homelessness in the city, but it is a small part in a larger problem that will help to solve the problem in the long run. And I think that's reflected in the policy directions outlined by the city in the official plan and in forthcoming zoning bylaw amendment changes that are being discussed by the city on an ongoing basis. So, I do feel that this is a positive change that will help housing affordability in the city of Kingston. I guess just to address it directly, although I suppose I did so a bit tangentially, on the topic of an absentee landlord, certainly this owner will use a property manager to maintain the property. It's a common practice in all municipalities, and if anything, is a positive benefit in the sense that there is someone whose job, literally their job, is to address problems related to maintenance and ongoing concerns with the property. So I think, while the owner may not be directly involved in day-to-day relations with the neighbors, there is a direct line of communication available to anyone who needs it, and there will be active involvement in ensuring the property is maintained going forward. Sorry, just catching up on the notes here. There was a question about the width of the driveway. I can confirm it's 3 meters wide, and that's reflected in the variances. So the driveway will be 3 meters wide at a minimum, and that is generally typical for one-way traffic movement, which being one parking space makes sense. A car will move in a forward motion, and again, they'll exit in a forward motion. Regarding I guess, the number of variances and the addition of that sort of last-minute variance regarding the fencing, we're certainly happy to work with the committee to ensure the variance addresses any of committee's concerns. We do feel, based on the comments from the neighbor, that it would be appropriate in this instance. The only neighbor impacted by that northerly fence location is the individual that recommended this particular change. So, we're happy to remove that additional variance that we recommended tonight, but we felt, again, that it would be appropriate given that the neighbor to the north that would be impacted by that change made the recommendation. Apologies, just catching my bearings here. With regards to the fencing on the south side, so there was a comment that there was concern that the variance should be clarified, that it shouldn't be left open to interpretation. We are more than happy to have that be clarified. However, the committee feels is necessary to ensure that a fence is provided, obviously, except where it can't be, where there is a garage currently. I do feel that the way the variance is worded in combination with the conditions associated with the approval, again, if approved, are sufficient. But if there's a way to further clarify that in writing, we would be happy to accommodate that. So I suppose the last large question that kind of runs through a few comments that we heard is this notice, or this notion of no negative impacts to adjacent properties that was mentioned a couple of times from staff's report, from the report that I authored as well. And I think, really to summarize what we're proposing here is that the design that we settled on, understanding that 8 bedrooms, as we discussed, 8 bedrooms is permitted as of right throughout the city in these urban areas. And I think what we envisioned with this application is that we're not really changing the function of the property. We're not changing the streetscape in terms of the principal dwelling that's there already. It will remain the same. The same goes for the garage. Certainly the appearance of the garage may change. There won't be garage doors. There will be a typical residential door along with windows. But the intent is really to have as few impacts as possible to the streetscape in the neighborhood. Alternative design options that, we don't have them, but could have feasibly been accommodated would be to enlarge the existing dwelling, for example. That is something that could be explored, or to expand the garage, something to that effect. But we felt that this proposal is effective in the sense that it does add new units. It achieves a lot of the goals that the city does support, but it also minimizes impacts to the streetscape and the neighborhood. So, I think when we talk about no negative impacts, that's really where we're coming from. And in terms of parking, we see this as a positive change in the sense that parking will be arranged in a safer manner. Cars will exit and enter the site in a forward manner. And there will be a process that the owner follows with new tenants to ensure that they understand that parking is not permitted in the driveway. There will be signage to indicate as much, but there will be a concerted effort on the part of the owner to ensure that that duty does not fall to the neighbors. So I think that covers the majority of comments. Certainly if I've missed any, please do feel free to let me know, but I think I'll turn it over to city staff at this point if they'd like to add anything.
Thank you. Through the chair, I'm happy to supplement that response and touch on a few other points that were directed at staff. So first, I do want to provide some clarity in regards to the modification to the privacy fence variance that's proposed. In staff's view, this is a modification to variance number 6, as opposed to a new variance number 7, if you will. The applicant was already seeking a variance to the privacy fence requirements of the zoning bylaw. So if the committee wishes, this is something that could be addressed by modifying the variance language of existing existing variance number 6 in the staff report, as opposed to a need to create an entirely new variance, such that as opposed to just eliminating the privacy fence from the south interior lot line, it be removed from both the south and the north interior lot line. I also very much agree with Mr. Weeks' point. If there is a desire on the part of committee to require that a privacy fence be provided along the south interior lot line, sort of from the rear building wall of the existing garage to the rear property line, such that it's provided wherever feasibly possible, I think that's certainly something that we could look to modify the language of that variance so as to explicitly recognize in the variance itself, if that's the desire of committee to do so. We did hear several comments tonight and certainly in the correspondence in regards to the potential for this property to be used for student housing and the existing use of the street as a family neighborhood. I think it's important to recognize that the intended or potential future user of a property, whether it be the owner or the tenant or a student tenant, is fundamentally not something that the zoning bylaw can consider. The Planning Act does give municipalities the authority to pass zoning bylaws for the use of land, but not for the users of land, as this would be contrary to the Ontario Human Rights Code. So how we define a family or how a property would be most suitably tenanted is not something that we can consider from a zoning perspective. One question that did come up several times, of course, was the suitability of the parking reduction in question. It was outlined in the staff report, but I think it's worth highlighting again that the city's official plan provides a list of locational criteria for which any reduction in parking for an additional residential unit such as this is to be reviewed against. And so those criteria include that the property is within walking distance of an express transit bus route, which in this case, the property is located within about 180 meters from King Street to the south. The next criteria is that it's within walking distance of commercial uses, for which this property is about 150 meters from Bernice's grocery store, which I understand to be a long-established institution in this neighborhood. And also that the property is within walking distance of parkland, open space, and community facilities. And so, of course, parks like Aberdeen Park, Oak Ridge Park, the Portsmouth Olympic Harbor, and the Tet Center are all within walking distance of this property. It is a very well-serviced street in terms of parkland access. So in staff's review of the requested parking reduction in this case, we are of course referring to those criteria as they're established in the official plan, and the property has had the ability to satisfy those criteria. So it's very much consistent with that direction that the official plan provides us with, and is consistent with the way those criteria have been provided to other properties in the past who have sought relief from this committee for a vehicle parking space for an additional residential unit. I appreciate the concerns in regards to the potential for needing to enforce vehicles parking within the driveway on this property. So as we know, and we've heard from Mr. Weeks, the property owner will be required to provide, install, and maintain no parking signage along the length of the driveway. However, any zoning enforcement matter, this would be addressed in the same way, in that if this were to become an issue that the city is hearing about, and the owner has not been able to comply with this requirement of the zoning bylaw, the city would, as it would in any other case, have the option to take whatever action it considers legally appropriate to deal with a zoning enforcement matter such as that, including prosecution under the Provincial Offences Act. So for that reason as well, it would very much be in the property owner's best interest to ensure that the property is complying with that requirements of the variance application should committee approve it this evening. There were also some questions in regards to the existing parking permissions on Alwington Ave, which I'm happy to clarify. So vehicles are currently prohibited from parking on the street between 9 a.m. and 12 p.m. and 1:30 p.m. and 4:30 p.m. from Monday to Friday. On the street. They are permitted in the evening or on weekends outside of those timeframes, or over the lunch hour as well, I should mention, for no more than 12 consecutive hours at a time. And of course, in the winter time, there are some months on which overnight parking is prohibited on the street. I did reach out to parking staff in particular in regards to some of the comments and questions that we had gotten in regards to this application, because I know there's been some concerns in terms of how deliveries could be accommodated to the site as well. And so they were able to clarify for me that although during the no parking periods from Monday to Friday on the property, stopping of vehicles is still permitted. So any delivery vehicle that's unloading or loading of a vehicle, that type of activity would still be permitted on the street to accommodate that type of very short-term use where the actual parking of a vehicle isn't required. Some questions I heard in regards to how this proposal would contribute to addressing the city's housing crisis and housing affordability across the city. So we know that increasing the supply of housing has an impact on housing affordability. Kingston was recently found to have a vacancy rate of 0.8%, which is certainly amongst the lowest in the province. We have a very, very low vacancy rate. And so any opportunity to increase the supply of rental housing is impactful in terms of increasing housing affordability for all. In this particular case, the applicant is seeking to create a new housing unit by utilizing an underutilized existing building in a location that is very well serviced by municipal servicing infrastructure, express transit, parks and community facilities, as I've mentioned, and is also located in close proximity to several employment and post-secondary uses that would allow for future site users to take advantage of the city's existing transit routes, as well as active transportation infrastructure. One of the requirements of the zoning bylaw for additional residential units is the provision of bicycle parking. So there will be a bicycle parking space that's required to be provided on the site. I know Miles spoke to this point a little bit too, but I do want to speak to the question of no impacts resulting from the proposal and comments to that effect in the staff report. So anytime staff are reviewing a proposal, in particular against the land use compatibility policies of the official plan, the city's official plan actually defines the term compatibility, and it speaks to development resulting in no undue adverse impacts. So, of course, anytime development occurs, there may be some type of impact that comes with that. But it's important to consider whether the extent of that impact is undue in nature. So in this case, the staff have reviewed the proposal and the specific variances that are needed to support this proposal, and we've found that the impacts are not undue in nature. Taking a look at my list, I just want to make sure I haven't missed anything. I think that was everything on my list, but Mr. Chair, certainly if I've missed anything, please feel free to let me know.
Thank you, Megan. So, turning to the committee, I guess there's two ways we can go. I wondered, first of all, whether the committee had any questions of staff or the applicant before we proceed to deliberation. None. Okay. I think we can go directly to deliberation. How would the committee like to proceed with this application? We need a mover and a seconder. Get it on the floor.
I mean, someone's got to move no matter what. We're going to vote on it after, so I'll move.
You're moving the application?
Yes?
And the seconder? We have a seconder. I think...
Discussion?
Pardon me? Well, the point I was going to raise, if I may, was the question of the changes to the variance related to the fencing. Should we move forward to discussion and then bring forward an amendment? If that be the case, I'm unsure of the protocol. Go ahead.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Vice Chair. So it is totally up to the committee whether or not they wish to proceed with the changed proposed thing to Amendment 6 or to Variance 6. I did have the opportunity to quickly throw it up on a slideshow so I can show you just what it would look like and what it would do. So if I'm going to have my meeting host just flip it up on screen. So in essence, it would be deleting the words southern lot line in variance number 6 to change it to interior lot lines, and that's what the proposed change would do. And if the committee wishes to do said amendment, it would need to be duly moved and seconded, and that would need to carry. Thank you. Sorry, yes, through you, Mr. Vice Chair. If the committee wishes to do this change to variance number 6, it would need to be moved and seconded and then have to carry.
I think the committee would prefer to get into deliberation right now. We have a mover, we have a seconder to adopt the staff report. It's carried.
Oh, so through you, Mr. Vice Chair, we already have a mover and seconder for the recommendation that's moved by Jordan and seconded by Jeff.
Right.
So do we, sorry, I just wanted to make sure because when you said the second mover, I just wanted clarification there, sorry.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I'm confused. I can't hear you. Yeah, I think we need a mover and a seconder to deal with the amendment to the
The
motion.
amendment, okay.
Yeah.
I can move that.
You move the amendment? Seconder? All in favor of the amendment? Sorry? Sorry?
Mr. Vice Chair, just a clarification on this amendment. That is, there is no requirement for a fence on the north side, that it will stay as a wire fence, and that there will be a privacy fence along the interior side yard to the south and to the rear. Is that how this amendment fits right now?
No, that's not what I read.
Through the chair, so the language that Ian had pulled up for us there on the projector, it provided for the reduction or the elimination, I'll say, of the north lot line fence, but it also maintained the elimination of the south lot line fence. If committee wishes to further modify the language of that variance so that it removes the requirement for the north fence, but maintains it where possible for the south, that those further tweaks would be required to that language.
Can you put that resolution back on the screen, please? I think that's different than what I understood you to say, Megan. If I heard you correctly, it was to eliminate the fence on the north side, but to still require a fence on the portions of the south side that are fenceable.
Correct. So we would need to modify the language on the projector here to do so. I'm happy to support with any changes to that language that may be needed.
I understand.
And through you, Mr. Chair, if the committee wishes, we can take like a brief 5-minute recess just to get the wording corrected, and then we can put it back on screen if that works.
So the clerk has suggested we call a recess. The committee is agreeable with that, shall we? All in favor? Carried. Okay, I think we're ready to call the meeting to order, please. And Ian, if you could put the amending motion, or sorry, somebody put the amending motion up. So we have this amended motion moved but not seconded. We need a seconder. Jeff, thank you, our seconder. Any discussion concerning the amended motion? Amending motion? Okay.
Just the amending? Just the amending. No comments.
So we call a vote on this amending motion. All in favor? And that's carried. I'm not sure about unanimously because I don't see some that.
There you go.
And now we return to the original motion as amended and open it for committee discussion and debate.
Me first? I've been on this committee for, I think, 5 years. Ian, you can tell me if it's longer. I voted consistently. So we, the committee, must assess the impact of the variances, not only on the subject property, but on the surrounding properties as well. We consider Section 45 Sub 1, Planning Act. I don't feel that the variances being sought is indeed minor given the sheer number of variances. And also I don't feel that the variance is desirable for the appropriate development. You guys vote the way you want to vote. You'll know where I'm going. That's it.
Jeff?
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. So in looking in this consideration here, I would normally expect that a small unit in the rear yard be with a family. We can't talk about how in the unit, but I would expect it to be a granny flat in the backyard with a one-bedroom unit. Here we're looking at 3. Well, there's maybe an entitlement to do this, but it's a maxing out of this property because they require a provision to take away one parking space, et cetera, where I would honestly expect them to be required to add an extra parking space above and beyond for the number of units on this property. So in looking at it, many of these are very technical and minor, truly minor things about fencing and setbacks, but the parking gives the reality here that this site is being overused, and I won't be supporting this application. And I would advise the applicant to go back and try to work within the existing zoning bylaw or to get a rezoning on this property. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Any additional comments? Seeing none, I'm not comfortable with this variance either. I believe that it is an inappropriate level of development for the property. So I think what's appropriate is to call a vote. Can I have a motion from the members, please? Motion to refuse? All in favor? Seconder, excuse me, do we have a seconder?
Pardon me, through Mr. Vice Chair. So we already have a motion on the floor. It's already the motion as amended.
Sorry.
All you have to do is vote for or against.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So,
Are you asking to hear from those for or against?
yeah, well, we have a motion on the floor and a seconder. What's the vote, please? I've never dealt with this before, so help me out.
Mr. Chair, you just have to call the vote.
Yeah, just call the vote. All in favor? Seeing none, and against? And it is carried.
Mr. Chair, I will require a slight recess to create a motion with the committee about why the committee refused.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll call the meeting to order, please. Given the decision of the committee, it's very important that the committee document its reasons. The staff have prepared a resolution.
Through you, Mr. Chair, looks good to me.
You moved it? I'm sorry? Yeah, it's good for you. Do we have a mover then? Beyond, a seconder, I guess. Seconder? All in favor? And opposed? That's carried. Just allow a minute for the room to clear. Sorry about that. Okay. Okay, I think we can proceed with item 8A on the agenda. Lindsay, if you could introduce the application.
Through you, Mr. Vice Chair. Item 8A is a minor variance, file number D13010-2024 at 18 Queen Street and 282 Ontario Street to vary maximum rooftop provisions to support the development of the property with a 23-story mixed-use building.
Okay, do we have the applicant or the applicant's agent present? Oh, on screen.
Hi there.
Yeah. Please proceed. Have anything you wish to add? Your name and address and anything you wish to add, please.
My name's Nancy Wortman, and I'm a registered professional planner with Arcadis, representing the applicant this evening. I don't have anything to add to staff's report, but if there are any questions, I'm happy to address them.
Thank you, Ms. Mortman. Does the committee members have any questions of staff or the applicant? Okay, seeing none, we'll move to the public portion of the meeting. I'll call for any public to step forward and speak. That's the first time. Second call. Anyone interested? And I think not. We'll forget the third call. Can I have a mover and a seconder with regard to the disposition of this application? Moved by Gary, seconded by Doug. Is there any discussion? None? We'll call the vote. All in favor? Carried. We'll move to item B of the application. Lindsay, if you would. Of the agenda, if you would.
Through you, Mr. Vice Chair. 8B is an application for minor variance, file number D13012-2024 at 900 to 920 Gardner's Road to obtain relief from minimum privacy yards and visitor parking setbacks to support development of the site with 3 new 6-story residential buildings.
Thank you. Is the owner or agent present? No, we're not online as well? Okay. Oh. Mr. Splinter, if you wish to speak, please do so. Name, of course, your address would be the best place to start, and any additional comments you have.
My name is Alex Splinter. I am an employee of the company Braebury Properties. In regards to the minor variation for the parking, it's to allow for space for vehicles whether it's for fire, for different things, or adjusting for any exterior repairs as well as it would allow for additional several units on the western side of the property in the interest to address the current parking issues. It will have no negative impact to any neighboring properties in any way.
Okay, thank you very much. Do the members of the committee have any questions? Go ahead, Jeff.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. A question for the applicant here. So we're looking at privacy yards being reduced in this situation. Is there going to be any mitigation, such as landscaping, et cetera, to compensate for the the reduction of distance here?
Yes, there's actually an uploaded example of a rendering showing vegetation and planter boxes in front of it, in addition to a subtle raise of the property of itself on the western side where the visitor parking is. I know there's another 2 buildings, but we've also putting planters in front of those as well.
Okay, one more here. So there's some significant oak trees along Gardner's Road. Are any of these going to be affected by this application or from these reductions?
No, so we submitted a pre-application. In that pre-application, it's required for us to provide a tree report. And in the tree report, we're not touching the significantly sized oaks. As I was reached out to by one of the council members as well as the city.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the committee? No, seeing none. All right, we'll open the public portion of the meeting. Are any members of the public present that wish to address the application for 920 Gardner's Road, either present or online?
Through you, Mr. Vice Chair, I can confirm there are 3 members on the public Zoom. Please raise your virtual hand if you wish to speak to this item. I'm not seeing any movement, Mr. Vice Chair.
Okay. I'm sorry. Can we, sorry, I lost my train of thought. Can we have a motion on the floor then, a mover and a seconder to approve the application as recommended by staff? Mover and a seconder, Doug. All in favor, please raise your hands. And that's carried unanimously. Sorry about that. Lindsay, could you introduce item 8C of the agenda, please?
Through you, Mr. Vice Chair, this is an application for minor variance, file number D13007-2024 at 283 Rideau Street to construct an additional residential unit. I'll also note that the addendum contains 3 letters of support for this application.
And we have an agent present. Would you like to address the committee? Name and address first in 5 minutes.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Vice Chair. Good evening, everyone. My name is Holly Crawford, and I'm a planner with Arcadis, here as the agent for the owners who are also here tonight. I have nothing further to add, but will note that I've reviewed the report and am in agreement with staff's recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Do members of the committee have questions of the staff or applicant agent? Seeing none, we'll open the public portion of the meeting. Is there anyone present in the chamber that wishes to address this application for 283 Rideau Street? Seeing no one. Anyone online, Ian? No, nobody online. All right, we'll close the public portion of the meeting, and we have a staff recommendation. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Jordan, seconded by Doug. All in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. Item 8D, Lindsay.
Through you, Mr. Vice Chair, this is an application for minor variance, file number D13011-2024 at 386 and 390 Johnson Street and 40 Aberdeen Street to allow rooftop mechanical and service building components to project above the maximum permitted height for an area occupying 30% of the roof area.
Thank you, Lindsay. And we have the owner's agent present. Do you have anything, name, address, and anything you wish to add, please?
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chair. My name is Yuko Leclerc. I'm a land use planner with FO10 Planning and Design, and I am here representing the owner and applicant. They are also present on the Zoom group. I would just like to add and note that I've had an opportunity to review the staff report and agree with the recommendation. For the benefit of the committee and the public, I would just also note this particular project and this particular property has been before the committee before, quite recently, in fact. Following that committee approval, the applicant moved forward with applications for site plan control and a much more intensive design of the building from a mechanical structural perspective. And in doing that, they've selected a mechanical system for heating and cooling called, I refer to my notes, a variable refrigerant flow, which is a much more efficient, it's a much more eco-friendly source of heating and cooling. It's not reliant on greenhouse gases. I think of it as very much a glorified heat pump for a scale of building of this size. And in doing so, they've determined that, and we've determined that there's a need for a little bit more space on the rooftop, which is what the variance that's before this committee is all about. And with that, Mr. Chair, I'm happy to answer any additional questions or comments.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the committee? Yep, Jeff?
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. So I take it there's amenity space on the roof in this situation here. Is that amenity space a requirement of this application?
Through you, Mr. Chair, there is rooftop amenity, which is a requirement for zoning compliance. And this increase in rooftop space that's needed for the VRF system will not reduce the amount of amenity space. They've sort of reconfigured the rooftop space to increase the amount of amenity space, in fact, than what was originally proposed. And that's, so the outcome will maintain that zoning compliance. We had received a variance for 13 square meters of amenities area per unit, which the project will continue to exceed altogether.
Okay, thank you. So to follow up on that, will there be anything mechanical in this that will affect the use or the enjoyment of this amenity space?
Through you, Mr. Chair, there is the rooftop mechanical equipment that's associated with this system is going to be screened in for acoustic reasons as well as for aesthetic reasons, and it will not interfere with the amenity area on the rooftop. So the two uses are effectively being separated and programmed differently, and that's being worked with. It's being reviewed through site plan control, obviously that the space will be functional and safe. It is on some of the drawings as well. There's plans of the rooftop in there that show that the spaces will be a little bit separate.
Thank you. I wanted to make sure that the amenity space was still going to be working in this situation, and I'm glad to see you've taken that into consideration. Thank you.
Any other question or comments from the committee? Seeing none, we'll open the public portion of the meeting. And is there anyone present in the chamber or online that wishes to speak to the application for 386 and 390 Johnson Street and 40 Aberdeen Street? Seeing no one, anyone online? No? Okay, we'll close the public portion of the meeting. And can I have a mover and a seconder to adopt the staff recommendation? Moved by Jeff, seconded by Jordan. All in favor? Carried unanimously. Lindsay, item 8E of the agenda.
Through you, Mr. Vice Chair, this is an application for permission, file number D13008-2024 at 814 River Styx Lane to reconstruct and enlarge an existing legal non-conforming dwelling.
Thank you. Good evening. Name and address, and you have 5 minutes.
My name is Tori Ruck. I'm a planner with Agent Canada, formerly Macintosh Perry. I'm the agent working on behalf of the owner, Rita Gerard, who is also here. I will note that I've read staff report and the conditions, and I approve, or I agree with those, and I'm open to any questions you might have.
Thank you. Any questions of the committee? Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Just a comment, unless it's planned to have another meeting this week, the date's wrong in here on the notice provisions. It says the COA is on March 22nd. So we should just correct that to tonight.
Jeff?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I take it this property is within the 30-meter setback from the high water mark, but it's also part of a flooded territory from the Rideau Canal. How is this property, this new building, going to be affected by either groundwater or any other possible flooding situations here, and how is it being mitigated?
So we're actually working on the grading plan right now and taking into account how that might affect it. But it is the intention that the building will not have any impact on the groundwater. And we might need to do some things with the swale and some whatnot to ensure that the groundwater is flowing back into the Rideau.
Okay, so you're looking at drainage going back to the Rideau,
Yep.
and I take it you already have concurrence or approval here from Parks Canada and all federal, what authorities have given their, which of the authorities have given their support of this?
I think it's in the planning report here, but we have been in touch with Parks Canada and the Rideau Canal. I forget what the name is, but we have been in touch with them.
CRCA, I think.
Yeah.
Sorry, it is a conservation
Yeah.
authority, but it's the Rideau Canal. Okay, there's just so many overlaps and authorities out there that I'm just wondering to make sure you've already got a concurrence on everybody on this situation.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Doug? No?
Sorry.
We'll open the public portion of the meeting. Is there anyone present, either in the room or online, that wishes to speak to the application for 814 River Styx Lane? No one present? Anyone online? All right, we'll close the public portion of the meeting. Can I have a motion from the committee and a seconder to approve? Moved by Jeff, seconded by Doug. All in favor? Carried. Item 8G, 11 Fergus Street. Lindsay, if you would.
Through you, Mr. Vice Chair, this is an application for minor variance, file number D13004-2024 at 11 Fergus Street to legalize a deficient front setback for a single detached house.
Is the applicant present, or?
I'm over here. Good evening. My name is Jamie Cochran. I'm the owner of 11 Fergus Street.
Do you have anything which you, and your address is 11 Fergus Street, correct? Yes.
That's correct, yes.
Do you have any additional information you wish to add to the staff report?
I do not.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any questions of the committee members for staff or for the applicant? Seeing none, I'll open the public portion of the meeting. Is there any member of the public present, either in the room or online, that wishes to speak to the application for 11 Fergus Street? Seeing none, that makes it really easy. We'll close the public meeting. Can I have a mover and a seconder to adopt the staff recommendation? Moved by Gary, seconded by Doug. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Item 8H, Lindsay.
Through you, Mr. Vice Chair, this is an application for minor variance, file number D13061-2023 at 394 and 392 Division Street to construct a front addition with exterior stair.
Good evening. Commence with your name and address.
Is my turn now?
Yeah, name and address in 5 minutes, sir.
My name is Rudy Piccinato from Venice, Italy.
Do you have anything further you wish to add to the staff report?
No, really.
No? Is there any questions of the committee members for the applicant or for staff? No? Seeing none, we'll open the public portion of the meeting. Is there anyone present in the room or online that wishes to speak to the application for 392-394 Division Street? No? Yeah, nobody? No. All right, we'll close the public portion of the meeting. And can I have a mover and a seconder to adopt the staff recommendation? Moved by Jordan, seconded by Jeff. All in favor? Carried. Item 8I. Lindsay?
Through you, Mr. Vice Chair, this is an application for consent, file number D10-021-2023 at 1027 Coverdale Drive to sever an approximately 5,463 square meter lot and establish easements for servicing and access across the severed and retained lots.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Adams. Your address, and you have 5 minutes to add anything you wish.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Yes, my name's Alex Adams. I'm with the Boulevard Group here representing the owners tonight. Nothing further to nothing further to add, but happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions of the Jeff? Please go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Vice Chair. A question for the applicant here. It's an irregular lot line going through here, and I'm wondering, it's obviously site-specific for a use in mind. My concern here is that if the application does not go through, that we have an irregular lot line that will be compromise any other applicant at a later date. I'm wondering if you have any comment on that.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. There is that slight little jog in it. It's not actually significant based on the scale of the property, so I don't think it would actually impact any other uses to go on there. The lots are significantly larger than the zoning does require, so I don't see it having any further impact.
Thank you.
Any further questions from the committee? No, seeing none, we'll close, we'll open the public portion of the meeting. Are there any members of the public present, either in the room or online, that wishes to address the application for 1027 Coverdale Drive?
We do have 3 members in the public viewing gallery. If you wish to speak to the application for, let me just quickly grab it back up, 1027 Coverdale Drive, please raise your virtual hand in Zoom. I'm not seeing any movement, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Ian. We'll close the public portion of the meeting. Can I have a motion from the committee to deal with this application? To approve it?
Did we discuss any of the correspondence?
Oh, excuse me. Sorry?
Did we discuss any of the correspondence with respect to this application?
So through you, Mr. Vice Chair, Jordan was asking if he could discuss the correspondence that was included as part of the application in the report. So you can reference it in your own discussions, but you cannot debate on the actual correspondence brought up. So if you wish to reference it in your response, you may.
I guess I'm asking, are the people that filed these here? And I guess the answer is no. Okay. I have nothing. Yeah.
A mover and a seconder to deal with, approve the application. Jeff, a seconder? Doug, all in favor? Any debate, any discussion on that?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
I'm sorry.
Vice Chair, just going through procedure, I take it now we can talk about the letter that was submitted.
Yeah.
Yes. There was a letter submitted. I'm just wondering if that is being addressed by either the applicant or by staff.
I think at this phase, we're only allowed to deliberate amongst ourselves, isn't that right? Are we allowed to ask staff questions?
Through you, Mr. Vice Chair, you are allowed to ask questions of clarification during this stage.
Okay. Sorry, Doug.
So is there a question of clarification to staff? I'm unsure what.
So there was a question from Mr. Scott regarding the letter that was included in the report, and if that had been addressed by the applicant.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair. Sorry, I missed it. It was directed to myself. All the comments in the correspondence relate to a future use of the property. The severance that we've got in front of us now is just the division of the land. Just to address them or to give comment to them, they are relating to potential use on the property. Noise reports, etc., have been completed, which will be reviewed by city staff through the site plan application.
Okay, you've got your clarification. Is there a mover and seconder for the application? I missed it. Yeah. All right, is there any debate on the application at all? Can I have the resolution to approve the application? Move. Carry.
All in favor? That's the question.
What?
The vote.
All in favor?
Yes.
Yeah. Any opposed? None. Carried. Lindsay, the next and final application is 8J, if you would, please.
Through you, Mr. Vice Chair, this is an application for minor variance, file number D13-003-2024 at 117 Dundas Street to construct an attached one-story addition.
Is the applicant, oh, there's the applicant's agent. Name and address in 5 minutes, sir.
My name is Matt Gervin. I'm the agent for the owners who are here in the audience tonight. And this is not a student housing issue. I don't think it's too much to add. It's a very small house, only 600 square feet. And they want to retire here and live in the home. And they're going to try to restore it to much of what it was originally. But I'm here for any questions you might have.
Are there any questions of the members of the committee for staff or the applicant's agent? Seeing none, we'll open the public portion of the meeting. Is there anyone present in the room or online that wishes to address the application for 117 Dundas Street? Seeing none, we'll close the public portion of the meeting. Can I have a resolution from the committee? A motion to approve the application is submitted. Moved by Jordan, seconded by Doug. Is there any debate or discussion on the application? No, seeing none, all in favor of the resolution? Carried unanimously.
Thank you very much.
So there are no motions and no notices of motions, nor any other business, nor any correspondence, and the date of the next meeting is April 15 at 5:30. Can I have a mover and seconder to adjourn the meeting? All in favor? Carried. What? Was Jeff and Doug. I'm going to resign.